Good afternoon, baseball fans. It is your favorite lady of baseball, Bourbon and Baseball. I'm just kidding. That's Julia Morales. I'm maybe your second favorite. I don't know. That's what I'm going to call myself though. This is Susie, and today we have an extra special guest. We have Jeff Balke. Balke.
Balke.
Balke. Dang it! I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I really thought I had it, but I didn't.
Everybody does.
Well, you may know Jeff from the Bleav in Astros podcast with his co-host Jeff Blum. And how has that been for you this season, Jeff?
It's good. Bleav actually recruited me to do the podcast last year, and their whole shtick is they are a podcasting company that pairs people who write about the team or cover the team with actual former athletes or coaches. And so that's kind of what they do. And if you look at some of their different podcasts, it's pretty common for them to have, Rudy Gay, the former basketball player, has a podcast with somebody that Solomon Wilcots, who's a national broadcaster, does a podcast with the Cincinnati Bengals for them. So it's kind of a cool concept. So when I first started, I was flying solo for the first, 2.5, 3 months. And then I got the news that Blum is going to be my co-host, and it's been great. I mean, Blummer and I have very similar senses of humor. We're about the same age. We have a lot of similarities in terms of we're both like movie quote machines,
right?
So it's pretty easy for us to have a conversation and know what each other is talking about. So it's really helpful, and he's just a fun guy to chat with for sure.
Well, that's super awesome. If at any point in time you need like a third co-host, just holler at me. I
will keep that in mind.
Mostly free. No, I'm just kidding. But anyhow, so let's chat a little bit about that disappointing ALCS results there.
Yeah, it's tough.
Today marks the actual retirement announcement from Dusty Baker.
That's right.
If you listened to this podcast at all in the past, I don't know, 6 months or so, you will know how I feel about Dusty. And two things can be true at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
The first being, when Dusty came into the organization in 2020, he was the correct choice, basically because he had enough baseball clout to kind of wade through the PR bullshit that's came with all of the scandal. Side note, I'm very sorry. I didn't give you guys the warning. This is an adult podcast, not adult in that way, but adult in like language usage. And if there's any small children near you while listening to this, I apologize. So Jeff, when you put, if you send this link out, just put maybe like a not safe for work warning on that. I don't know. I don't want to tell you.
They'll survive.
Yeah. So, but there will be cuss words dropped. So I apologize. So, like I said, the PR nightmare that came with being the manager of the quote unquote cheating Houston Astros. And if you're just audio only, you can hear the quotes in my voice there. So again, 2020, the entire run that he's had, I personally would have loved to send him on his way last season on a high note, winning that World Series, and that basically being the culmination, the pinnacle of his coaching career here. And for me personally, it just felt like this kind of marred that. I know the sentiment is not shared by many people here, but this season just seemed like it was a disappointment all in all overall, just because it didn't have to be as hard as it was. And unfortunately for me, I'm like, Dusty, why? Like, all of us could have like hand in hand walked into the sunset, and just everyone would have been thrilled with that. And unfortunately it didn't happen that way for us, but for me personally. But again, I know that I am in the minority of
I think part of it is that it's hard to argue with a team that went to Game 7 of the ALCS. I mean, regardless of all the different things that happened during the course of this season, and they've certainly been enumerated repeatedly by me and other people, the Astros still had one of the best records in baseball. They were still made it to Game 7 of the LCS, and frankly, probably shouldn't have, because the Rangers are simply a better team than them, no matter what we might want to think about it. He did it with a boatload of injuries. I mean, 2 of our starting pitchers were gone before we even started day 1, essentially. And we had another one that missed a big chunk of the season. Jose Altuve missed 70 games. Yordan Alvarez missed 50. I think, given all of the circumstances that happened this year, this was probably a pretty good outcome for the Astros. It's disappointing because we're spoiled and we're used to the Astros, going to the World Series, competing every single year. And that makes a total sense for us. I think if we were on the outside of this looking in, like if this were us looking at, I don't know, the Milwaukee Brewers or somebody else, we would be like, damn, that was kind of an impressive season considering everything that happened. But when you're on the interior of it, it stings and you want it to be better. And of course, I'm with you. I mean, I think Dusty made a lot of decisions this year that probably showed a little bit of his age in terms of his approach to baseball. But I've said from the beginning that my biggest argument was with Chas McCormick. I did not necessarily here's my thing. I don't agree with him on not playing Yainer Diaz more often, but I can accept and understand the argument.
Right.
I don't agree with it personally, but the idea of Maldi being, beloved by pitchers and another coach on the field, as much as I may disagree with that, I can get behind that argument and I can see the argument for it. I just never could understand the argument behind Chas McCormick not playing pretty much everyday baseball in center field. That was probably the biggest difference I had with Dusty Baker all year in terms of the way he managed the ball club. Otherwise, I'm glad to see him retire. He's an icon in the sport. He's an icon, period. And I think it's good time. It's good timing for the Astros. One of the things I was writing about Dusty today a little bit, and one of the things that I think we all forget about is, honestly, he didn't just slog the Astros out of the cheating scandal. He slogged them through a COVID-shortened year.
Yep.
And they didn't win the division. The A's won the division that year, as many people seem to forget. And the Astros went to the ALCS. So there are a lot of positives in his 5 years here, obviously culminating with the World Series last year. But it is time for a change. It started last year when Dana Brown came in as the new GM, and now we'll see what they do. Fingers crossed, not Brad Ausmus. When it comes to
good. I'm glad
to bring a new manager.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because that was one of the points that I was going to broach carefully. But now that you've said that, let's full on dive into that. So I was looking at that, and I had kind of looked back and said, wait, wasn't Brad Ausmus a player here? What's that all about? And then looking at his overall managerial record, what happened in the clubhouse in LA during his tenure. I'm sorry if Brad Ausmus is our new manager, I'm gonna just have to just fully jump into my Diamondbacks love affair that I'm only flirting with right now. But yikes on bikes, guys. If you want Brad Ausmus as your manager, please come talk to me. I need to know the thinking behind your decision, if that's what you actually want.
Well, it would be weird. I think Ausmus was a very solid defensive catcher here for the Astros. He was a guy I think most people thought would end up in a managerial role at some point because he was that type of person while he was here. To me, this feels like, the only reason he would be considered, I think, is because Jeff Bagwell and here buddies,
right.
And Bagwell's, sort of becoming the Jack Easterby of the Houston Astros. If you follow the Houston Texans and their sagas, he's a guy that sort of is buddies with Jim Crane. He's behind the scenes. He's kind of whispering in his ear. I think that this is what I feel. Jim Crane, the one thing I will say about Jim Crane is that whatever you may think about him, he is a guy that swings for the fences almost every time. I can't imagine that he's not going to want someone with it's either going to be one of two things to me. It's either going to be somebody who's very high profile, who will make a splash and put a stamp on the team, or it will be somebody internal that maintains the stability of the organization as it exists now. I don't think you're going to see him go with a weird lesser name outside of the organization. And I think Ausmus is a lesser name. I think in baseball in general, I just don't think Brad Ausmus is a very well, considered candidate.
Right.
I mean, he certainly hasn't been, interviewing for managerial candidates anytime in the last year or so. So I think if it's going to be anybody, it's either going to be somebody that's kind of a splash, or it's going to be somebody like Joe Espada, who's already within the organization and can help sort of, keep that ship afloat as we get closer to bigger names in free agency.
So if you had your choice, if Jim Crane said, "Hey, Jeff, who would you want to be the manager of the 2024 Houston Astros?" Your answer would be?
Oh man, I mean, I don't know. Partially, I do think that Joe Espada would be a good choice. I do think he and Omar Lopez are both going to be, I think, on the short list. I mean, probably would be good choices. But I mean, if I had anybody, it would be Craig Counsell from the Brewers. I think he's going to end up in New York in the Mets because that's where the GM went. So I think he's going to end up there. But if it were anybody, that would be him. He's got that youthful energy. He's a former player. He's certainly really been good at with Milwaukee and helping them. And frankly, he'd be coming to a team with a big market payroll from a team that didn't have one. So I think there's more that could be done. Never mind the talent level that already exists here. So Counsell would be my choice. I just don't think they're going to be able to get him. But I think if failing him, I would probably look to one of the guys inside the organization myself.
Gotcha. All right. Well, so I obviously, like I said, am a little bit disappointed in the result of the ALCS. I am, however, looking forward to stalking all of the player wives and players on Instagram to see how they're spending their off season, though. Just FYI. So this will now kind of become a ode to the Diamondbacks. If for some reason y'all are one of the people that are like, "Oh no, so since the Astros are out, we now have to change and cheer for the Rangers because at least that is a Texas team, took the World Series trophy in Texas." If you're one of those people, I just need you to get the F out. Absolutely.
Look, let me tell you my opinion on this. I am not. So there's one Texas team, that I will root for that is not in Houston, and that's the San Antonio Spurs. And the only reason I would root for the San Antonio Spurs is because I think it's a good organization. I like Greg Popovich, their coach and their GM. I think they're just a good organization overall. I know a lot of my fellow Rockets fans would hate me for even suggesting it, but that's the only one. Outside of them, Mavericks, bye. Rangers, no thank you. Cowboys, what are you kidding me? Yeah. So, and I have no desire to. What are you going to root for? I don't like rooting for people to beat me.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right? I mean, that's. I mean, I can root for another. I could have rooted for the Phillies this year if they were in the World Series. I could have rooted for if we had lost in the opening round and then, somebody else from the AL went on and didn't this. I could root for them. I can't root for the Rangers. What are you kidding me?
No, absolutely not. No, it's
all I can say for the Rangers is I will root for a long series because it will have lots of games there. And my cousin owns an amazing restaurant in Dallas, and hopefully that'll bring him more business. Well, that's the only reason.
Drop the name. All 4 of my listeners are waiting with bated breath.
My cousin Matt Balke owns a restaurant called Encina. It's always on Dallas's top 10, top 20 lists of restaurants. It's absolutely fantastic. Last time I was there,
where in Dallas is it? Actually
just southwest of downtown Dallas. Yeah, okay. I forget the name of the neighborhood, but it's kind of a up and coming neighborhood, and he's a phenomenal chef. And he and his girlfriend, who used to own a bar right down the street, now does all the beverage service for Encina. Whoa. They have it together, and it's just so good. Every time I'm there, I just eat myself till I'm sick.
Well, very cool.
And so, but I'm not rooting for the Rangers. There's no way. And look, I like the Diamondbacks. I will tell you, I didn't know very much about them until the Astros played them that last series of the year.
Well, you've come to the right place, Jeff.
and I've watched them I've watched them quite I was rooting for them against the Phillies, even though all my in-laws relatives, they live in Philadelphia.
Oh,
I'm
no.
sure they're furious at me for rooting but you can't help but root for them. I mean,
Oh,
the
yeah.
underdog story is great.
So, are you a musical? Do you listen to musicals, Jeff? Do you?
Oh, musicals. I mean,
Yes.
like,
No.
I mean, I know musical theater, but I'm not a huge fan or anything.
Have
My
you
wife, it works for the opera. So
Have you seen Hamilton?
I'm gonna get crushed for this. I watched it and I turned it off halfway through.
Oh my gosh, Jeff. Golly.
I know. I get crushed. My wife actually did too. My wife does like musical theater, so it's fine.
Okay.
My favorite, if you have to hold my hand to fire, I mean, I love Book of Mormon.
Okay.
And
Well,
and there's some that I like. That one I just didn't care for
so
personally.
the entire reason I'm asking this is I
Yes.
realize that there's probably a very, very slim margin of crossover between baseball and
The
musical
Venn
theater,
diagram
but
of
yeah.
Hamilton and Arizona Diamondbacks might
Yeah,
be pretty narrow.
it's like me and like 3 other people. They're probably not listening to this podcast, but, the Diamondbacks remind me of the song from Hamilton where it's, "Young, Scrappy, and Hungry," and that is the epitome of the Diamondbacks. I mean, one of their
I can see
nicknames
that.
is the Babybacks because of that really young core of, Corbin Carroll and Alec Thomas and
Yeah.
Gabby Moreno. And they've had some veterans come on via trade and via signings and whatnot. With Tommy Pham, Ketel Marte has been there forever, and Evan Longoria coming on. But that team to me, and we thankful to my again one of my 4 listeners that had said, "Hey, I remember way back at the beginning of the season when you guys were on the Diamondbacks," and I said, "Watch out for the Diamondbacks. They're going to be sneaky." I did not predict that they were going to get to the World Series. I really thought that they were probably a year away with the whole pitching situation, but Brandon Pfaadt coming on and just being absolutely lights out in the playoffs has just been chef's kiss. So if any Astros fans out there that are listening need any more reason to root for the Diamondbacks, remember who their pitching coach
Brent
is.
Strom. That's
Brent
the main
Strom.
reason. Stromy.
Pitching wizard, black magic doer, Brent Strom. And one of the stories that I heard on a different podcast, and I can't remember which, and I'm so very sorry that I can't tell you the source. But basically, in spring training of not in spring training, summer of last season, he calls Brandon Pfaadt, who still lives with his parents because he's like all of 4 years old, calls him and says, "Hey, you are going to be pitching big, meaningful innings for us in the postseason." And at this point, he's not even made it up to the club yet, And so he's like, I'm sorry, what now, Coach Brent Strom? What? And he's like, no. He goes, "I have full faith in you." So the fact that Brent Strom is Nostradamus and is predicting that Brandon Pfaadt is going to be pitching big innings for them, and it wasn't all lollipops and rainbows for Brandon Pfaadt. He came up and got blasted and had to go back down to AAA for a while, and then came back up and didn't have a great regular season, but like I said, in the postseason, his first start went 5.2 innings, I think, struck out 9. Second time around, I think went 4 innings, maybe 5 innings, but struck out 7. And again, no one in their right mind is thinking that all of the wins that they're going to get are on the backs of Brandon Pfaadt and the bullpen games. That's not
well, their
not
7,
how
8,
that was
9.
for
Their
him.
7, 8, 9 guys are about as good as anybody in baseball. They're like the equivalent of Neris, Abreu, and Presley. I mean, they're shut down. Their last inning guys are really shut down, and that's been super impressive.
Oh yes. Andrew Saalfrank. Everyone's like, I'm sorry, who? Yeah, he was a rookie. This is his first, not even full season. That entire back into that bullpen hasn't been there since the beginning of the season. Like I want to say August was when they come out. Ryan Thompson was a throwaway from the Rays. We all know how the pitching machine that the Rays are, and then Paul Sewald that they got at the trade deadline from the Mariners, and that was
That was a good get.
and people
It
kind
was a
of
good under the radar get.
it was thought of kind of as a lateral move almost.
Mhm.
But they had to give up Josh Rojas, who was part of that young core that we had just discussed. And I saw a tweet from, I guess, a Mariners fan that Paul Sewald had retweeted, and basically Paul had written on a baseball that he had given to this fan's son, saying, thank you so much for being a fan, and we'll see you in the World Series. When he was still with the Mariners, and I was like, we're not going to point out that you were on the Mariners and you thought that it was the Mariners, but like, congrats to you, Paul Sewald, for making it with the Diamondbacks. Like, I love that for you.
Yeah,
So
Strom's really good at, and I think also the Astros pitching coaches who were basically under the Strom's tutelage grew up. I think they have that ability to see in pitchers kind of project what they can be. We've seen them do that with the Astros with lots of guys. They bring them in and, suddenly they go from being, pretty good relievers or pretty good starts to being, surprisingly great. Like I don't think anybody thought Ryan Stanek was going to set the Astros record last year for ERA out of the bullpen. But, and especially given the fact that he didn't even make it on the postseason roster because his whip was too high.
Right.
But that's what the Astros get from a lot of guys. And that's part of the legacy of Brent Strom here and what hopefully will continue with the guys they have. And I think it's the Astros are, and the Diamondbacks clearly are on this freight train of being ahead of the game when it comes to measuring potential talent through analytics. And, it's one thing to measure game in, game out decision making, with computer power. But to be able to project wins, to do that sort of Moneyball estimations that we've seen so frequently, they've become really, really good at it. And particularly on the pitching side. And Strom, hey, look, to his credit, the guy embraced it. I mean, he's not a spring chicken, right? And he's been in the league a long time, and he was like, yeah, let's do this. Also, he's a big dog guy, by the way, which I really love.
Yeah.
But
I miss Stromy. I really,
but I mean, he really did embrace this idea of, hey, let's use this to project where these guys can and potentially will be and even just in the next year. Let's get this reliever who maybe doesn't have but one really good pitch right now, but we think he's got a good enough hook that we can increase his spin rate. It's just very impressive stuff and way too deep in the weeds for a mind like mine that absolutely shuns math like it was the plague.
Yes.
But just very impressive. Like I wouldn't know an ex-woba if it hit me in the head with a baseball bat. But it's like, but I am very impressed by their ability to harness that computing power and use it for. I was gonna say use it for good. I feel like I'm on Spider-Man, but it's like, but to use it for their to enhance the potential of players. It's great, and that using Fott as an example of just saying, hey, we imagine you pitching big games for us. That's pretty good foresight.
Oh yeah. Well, and just the in-game decisions as well. In game 7 when Brandon Fott was basically out there, it was not Nick Castellanos who was it was the pinch hit, maybe Jake K. No. That was later on. But basically I don't remember who the player was, but basically it was Brandon Fott. There was a runner on first and second, and you see Brent Strom, they cut to him, and Brent Strom's doing one of these like think motions. If you're audio only, it's like finger to the forehead kind of thing. And kind of saying, like, be smart about it. And it was basically just kind of letting them know, hey, if you got to walk this guy, because you can get Rojas, their 9-hole hitter. You can get him out. Be smart about it. Don't let this batter beat you.
Maybe guys like Brent Strom, they don't need maybe they don't need the pitch thing, the pitch comm. Maybe he's just like pulls the Jedi. He's like, this is not the pitch you're wanting to throw.
No. No,
You
and
know,
you
it's like,
you, like you can totally see him just letting them know, "Hey, make good decisions,"
yeah.
this is what I tell my 8-year-olds as they get out of the car in the morning, "Make smart decisions," and
That's
so
good advice for anybody.
right, they're not old enough yet for the d don't do what I wouldn't do advice, because that's gonna get you guys in a lot of
As
trouble,
as
so
soon as they're like, "Mom, that leaves me too much room."
yeah, yeah. One of them would be like, Mom, that's not good," and then the other one would just take that and run, but anyways, so, yeah, the World Series, neither team, well, the Rangers obviously never winning a World Series, we're not gonna pour salt in any more wounds, Nelson Cruz, but the Diamondbacks only winning, the 1 World Series,
Mhm.
and it eerily matches up with their 1 World Series win. I mean, that was what, 21 years ago,
Yeah,
22
yeah,
years
but
ago?
that sounds right. With Randy Johnson
So
was on?
yes, yes.
Mhm.
So basically, when the World Series, like, all of the dates, all of the games are going to match up from
That's funny.
21 years ago. Um, the one of the starting pitchers hit a bird.
Oh, God.
Mhm.
That
Yep.
was yeah, that was incredible. That's still one of the most
So that
unbelievable moments in sports history.
I'm like, "How does that happen again?"
That bird,
But then
that poor
yeah.
bastard bird just
Oh,
exploded
yeah.
too. I
Well,
mean, I
so, Randy Johnson, Zach Allen, have yourself moments that matches up, and it was basically, everybody, quote unquote, "rooting against" the Diamondbacks in
well, I
that
think
World Series
in the
year.
national I think yeah, I think in the national media, there's certainly a perception of that. Look, everybody wants the big market teams to play in the World Series because
Right.
the perception is because look, most of the baseball writers in America are concentrated within about 100 square miles around New York City.
Yep.
So they're obviously going to be rooting for East Coast guys. This is going to mostly these some of these games are going to start well after their bedtime.
Oh, yeah.
So so I get it, but I mean, to me, to me it's an intriguing series because you really have the Diamondbacks. I mean, they're really facing a team in the Rangers. It's very similar to the Phillies,
Yep.
just with maybe not quite as much pitching as the Phillies had. I mean, it's a very similar team. Lots and lots of power in their lineup. A really long and deep lineup. Not a great bullpen to speak of, but some very good starting pitchers with some real experience. Just like the Phillies, the Rangers spent a boatload of money in the offseason
Yep.
to bring in big name guys to sort of shepherd their organization. So yeah, there's some real parallels there, and the fact that the Diamondbacks were able to beat the Phillies. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I did not think they were going to win after those first 2 games. I don't think anybody did. I don't know if you
Yeah.
saw Chris Mad Dog Russo said he'd
Oh, yeah.
retire on the spot. He goes on Howard Stern, and now he gets to run around in an Arizona Diamondbacks bikini through the streets of Manhattan, calling himself a liar and a dope because God bless,
Yeah.
that's what Howard Stern does.
Yeah, I think
Um,
I think everyone would rather he retire instead.
I know,
I
right?
mean, I don't
Right? Yeah,
that's
no, I don't think anybody needs to
yeah.
see that.
Like,
Nobody
that's a
wants to see
punishment
that.
now that
That's
he's
right.
running around in a
But
bikini.
I will say that, look, that they faced I just been referring to the Phillies as Duck Dynasty because that's what they look like. They look like a bunch of rejects from Duck Dynasty. And it's like they beat Duck Dynasty. Now they're going to have to take on the Rangers. If anybody has the ability to go through that, and I mean they faced the Dodgers. I mean every team they faced has been just a power lineup.
Yeah.
And they've been able to get through all that with some really smart pitching, some very, very timely hitting, and just smart play. I think that's the biggest thing about the Diamondbacks that's been great about them is they're just smart.
Yeah.
They don't hurt themselves. It was something we saw the Astros do too often
Time
this
time and
season.
time again.
Yeah, especially given the fact that look, most times you can guarantee that a good defensive team is going to remain good defensively. And the Astros did not. And they, so that you give them credit. Watching the few games that I have with the Diamondbacks too, they're smart at the plate. They don't swing at a lot of bad pitches, and they foul off a lot of things. They push pitch counts high. That's what they're going to have to do against the Rangers too. And they certainly have the ability to do it. It's a pretty cool story.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm so excited to watch the Diamondbacks, and one of the big storylines, with the Diamondbacks was the fact that you have Corbin Carroll and Alek Thomas and those
Yeah,
really fast guys that just
and
stole
young.
all of the bases.
Just
Yes.
kids. I mean,
Yep.
Alek Thomas, I don't know if Blummer told this story that Alek Thomas is the son of Alan
Oh,
Thomas, who
the
was the
White
strength and
Sox?
conditioning coach at the White Sox when
Yeah.
Blummer was playing there and won a World Series against the Astros.
Yes.
And he used to shag fly balls for them.
Yeah.
So in fact, he saw Alec Thomas in that final series of the season with the Astros, and he went up to say hello to him, thinking he wouldn't even remember him, which is classic sort of Blum. Like, who
Right.
doesn't remember Blummer?
Right.
And the kid was like, "No, I remember you. How are you?" Blah blah blah. And so I chatted with him. So I mean, obviously, and Carroll is to me a fascinating story, because that's a guy that was he's terrible to start the series, and then comes on with 3 hits in the deciding game.
Yep, 3 hits, 2 steals. Only player ever in the MLB to
Yeah.
record 3 hits and 2 steals in the same game.
Well, let's see who's going to win tacos for everybody. I think it's going to have to be Carroll or somebody like that that's going to win tacos in the World Series for everybody for getting the stolen base. Honestly, at this point, I feel like Taco Bell are one of those. They should just give up on the stolen base. What, are you kidding me for tacos now? I mean, there was a guy that stole 70 bases in baseball this year.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I think you may need to do better than a stolen base. I need to do something a little more difficult.
Well, and but I mean, the storyline was the fact that the Diamondbacks didn't steal the first 5 games.
Yes, that was so weird. They played it really conservative.
Oh yeah. Well, and I'm wondering how much of that is gamesmanship, and like, we're not going to show you how well we can steal bags. We're going to wait until the pressure is really on, and then your pitchers are going to have to be pinpoint accurate. Like,
well, I think also some of it might have been too that they were unfamiliar with the pitching staff, so it was a little bit harder to run on those guys. But here's the thing to me that I think is smart, and this is, any good team does this, and that is they force the other team to make mistakes, right? They push other teams to make decisions. So if you run, right, you're forcing somebody to make a throw to try and get a guy out. That can lead to bad things. There's one outcome that it leads to that's good, and like 100 that are not good, which is why I think quite a bit throughout this series, throughout this entire postseason, we've seen a lot of guys run uncontested. There've been a lot of non-throws on stolen bases, because catcher gets up and he's like, okay, I can heave this down there, but my chances of catching this guy are far less than me throwing it into the outfield. And so I think when you're aggressive in those ways, hit and runs, and a lot of things that baseball wanted to have happen when it increased the size of the base, and when it, went to the pitch clock and all the rules with disengagement and all that kind of stuff, I feel like that's exactly what they've gotten. They've gotten these situations where people are going to try to take advantage, and sometimes it's going to backfire and in spectacular ways, and sometimes it's going to be great. And so I think the Diamondbacks, they did that thing that teams that don't have, the quote, don't have a lot to lose. Of course, everybody's got a lot to lose. You have the chance to go to the World Series, but they did that classic thing that I think young, aggressive teams do, and they're like, fuck it.
Right.
Let's just
we're just gonna play hard.
I'm gonna run, and if this guy catches me, and if he doesn't, that's fine. There is a that risk reward. They obviously kind of a high risk reward situation, but they're like, fine, why not? And let's be honest, they have a future. They're a team that has great young talent. And so, if they don't make the World Series this year, they always will next year. And they did.
Well, and the cojones of Corbin Carroll to have Ranger Suarez, possibly one of the best fielding pitchers ever.
Oh, for sure.
Literally staring at you, because he's already disengaged twice. So that Corbin Carroll is going to run on him. So the fact that Ranger Suarez is staring at you.
Yep.
And you just make the move to steal on him, forcing Bryce Harper to make the throw to Bryson Stott. Just how fast are you?
It's great drama. It's great. It's a great story in baseball when you have something like that. I love the disengagement rule thing too, because once they've disengaged twice, then you really, it's basically just a showdown at that point. It's like, listen, I have to throw it. I know you're going to run, let's see who wins. And I think those are, and frankly, look, kudos. I don't give Rob Manfred credit for anything. I'll just say kudos to baseball that they made some of these decisions, which some of them were pretty maligned, but let's be honest. I mean, they've made a big difference in this season and how the
Oh, yeah.
gameplay has gone. It's been exciting. It's been fun. Now, if they'll just get the robo umps in here,
Oh, yeah.
then we can move on with our lives and stop wanting to murder people.
I don't know why. Don't you want, the pitch called 3 inches outside, like, the outside edge to make people
Look,
swing and change swing patterns and decisions? I
all
love
I'm
it.
saying is Angel Hernandez should never be allowed to officiate another game. I don't know if he has naked pictures of Rob Manfred on a hard drive somewhere or what it is, but you've got some officials out there who are just downright horrible.
Yeah,
And I
it's
mean,
just
look, also, there are some really good ones too.
yes.
Should not discount the guys who are out there really working hard and
Yeah.
doing a good job, but there are too many of them who are part of the game. And
Amen.
hopefully that's not in the World Series. Hopefully they get over their 70% strike
Uh,
percentage calls for a game. Good
no,
Lord.
no, no. I actually did see on Twitter that the umpiring crews have come out, and I think the only umpiring crew, that had a, like, top 10 percentage rate is only gonna be on game 2. All of the other games are vastly, vastly, just very below average, and it's
Just
it's
just
it's
to
not.
get the damn just get and the robo-umps have been I don't there was a great article in The Athletic earlier this year about how the robo-umps in AAA have not only been a success in terms of calling balls and strikes, but they've actually made hitters, have better strike zone awareness
Oh,
because
I can only imagine, yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
because they can figure out where the strike zone is gonna be on a consistent everyday basis, and by the way, if baseball really wants more offense, that's how you do it. Make the
Bring
strike
back the
zones
juiced balls. That just Aaron Judge got them. I'm just saying, like, bring them back for everybody. That's all I'm gonna say. So, well,
fair.
we'll wrap on this. Jeff, do you have a World Series prediction?
I know a lot of people are picking the Rangers. I'm not. I'm picking the Diamondbacks. I'm just not going to bet against them, given what they've done so far. And I do still think, regardless of what they've done in this postseason, I still think the Rangers bullpen is a problem.
Yeah,
I
for sure.
just, I would, if I were the Rangers, I would be worried about that bullpen, and the consistency of hit. Like maybe they can score 8, 9, 10 runs a game. I just don't see it happening. And given that, at some point they're going to have to get into that bullpen. And
Yep.
I think if you're the Diamondbacks, you can take advantage of that. So I'm going to take them, but I think it's going to be a long series. I think it's
Yeah.
6 or 7 games, but I'm going to take the D-backs.
Yeah, I'm hoping D-backs in 7, and I hope that on the 7th game, they wear those, like, super retro, purple. They're throwbacks.
Yes.
That's what I'm hoping. So, D-backs in 7, yay. Jeff, tell the people where they can find you on all of the
You can
socials.
find me at Jeff Balke, JEFFBALKE, and you can find the Bleav in Astros podcast at Bleav in Astros. It's Bleav spelled BLEAV. Blummer and I will be on there all off season talking hot stove. I'm sure dissecting whoever they hire as manager, not Brad Osmus.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to be I think it's going to be a very entertaining off season for the Astros because I think they have some holes to fill, and I think they're going to have to make some pretty significant decisions. I think Alex Bregman's going to have to be the first one because if you're not going to sign him long term, and I doubt they can, this is his last year under contract. You might have to think about moving Alex Bregman.
Yeah.
Might have
We'll
to happen.
we'll have to get you guys back on and
Yeah,
do a whole other segment on that because I've got lots of thoughts for you on that. So,
sounds good.
but with that, I will put all of the links for Jeff in the episode description below, so you can find him there. Jeff, again, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time out. And with that, we will say goodbye and yay, baseball.